Hey, this is Josh Hayes, and you're listening to the American Superbike Show.
Thank you, Joshua Hayes. For those of you that are new to the show, first of all, welcome. But this is the first show I get to put into place, one of the little pet projects I have been working on, and that is having a library of writers to help introduce the show each and every week. Now, after this weekend, I have enough to where I don't think we shouldn't have any repeats for at least months, if not years. Welcome back, by the way, to the American Superbike Show. I'm your host, Itch Turner, and I am super touched by all the help I continue to receive from riders for things like this, and team members, and most importantly, fans like you. I'm representing more than myself here now, and I'm going to keep doing my best to take that responsibility seriously. So with all that being said, I'm not always going to try and match up the rider with something at the front of the show like this. But how can I not use that one first after Josh Hayes collected his 90th career AMA victory over the weekend? Before we get into the race recaps, we have a mailbag question this week. You can submit questions on Reddit through email at americansuperbikeshow@gmail.com, or you can use the contact page at americansuperbikeshow.com. If you do submit a question, I will do my best to not only track down the answer, but I will also answer it first thing on the show, because if I don't, I will forget about it entirely. This week's question is from Megan Your Jacket off of Reddit, and I guess it's not really a question, but since I was there in person, I decided to do what I could to see what I could find, or however you say words, because talking's not really important on a podcast. They wrote, "Let us know if you hear anyone talking about what Joe Roberts might do for next year. Also, best of luck on the job front." First of all, thank you very much. For the best wishes, I have decided I'm not getting a job. So that takes care of that. I will say that I did start college this week. I'm going back and getting the certificate. All right. Anyways, let's move on from that. Going to Joe Roberts. What is he going to do next year? And my honest answer is I don't know. But we're going to use some therapy words here, because there are some things I do know. And if you are new to the show, my therapy words are I think, I feel, and I know. I think is exactly as it sounds. I thought it up. Okay? This isn't anything I haven't confirmed in any sort of way. It's just like my gut, what I think is going to happen. I feel is more than just me thinking it, okay? I'm hearing things, but it's not confirmed. So I'm not really ready to say exactly, what it is. It's something that I know, which is the last category. I know this for a fact. I have probably either heard it from more than one person that I know, that I trust enough to believe them, or I'm hearing it from the person directly that this is what they're going to do. So that is, I think, I feel, I know. I know contact has been made between Joe Roberts and people involved with MotoAmerica. I'm 100% sold on that. And I definitely know enough that I can put that in the I know category. So there is interest there. Okay. From what I understand as well, Joe Roberts, he still lives in the United States. He never really moved over to Europe like a lot of people do. So he's been commuting back and forth because he likes, he's a California kid and he loves being at home. So I wouldn't, it shouldn't be surprising that he would be returning, or at least pursuing if there are any options for him to return to America. So that's what I know. Here's what I don't know. Okay. I don't know what teams he's talked to or his representatives have talked to or anything of that nature. If we want to continue with the therapy words, one thing I think I can say is I feel like we can rule out Warhorse Ducati. Okay. Because I feel like their riders are on multi-year deals and that do not expire at the end of the season. And that's going to lead me to the last part of this. I think over the last couple months of the season, because August is the time where people start to, begin those those negotiations and talking about next year and what they're going to do. And So I'm going to spend the last couple of months of the season just kind of trying to figure out who already is signed up for like a multi-year deal so that they're coming back next year. And that way it makes it a lot easier to figure out who may be taking the whatever rides may still be available. Anyways, so I love these questions and going down these little rabbit holes. Also, before we get to the races, we do have some news of the week. And unfortunately, it's not good news. Corey Alexander of the Arch Racing team, he's going to miss the final Hooligans round at COTA due to a back surgery. It was something he put off as long as possible, and it just wasn't possible to put it off anymore. That's what he put out on his Instagram. I really wish him a speedy recovery because he's a super nice guy. Whenever I come up and I start to talk to him and everything, he always gives me a little bit of time and never never treats me like I'm a nobody. Like, he's one of those nice kind of people, and I hope to see him again at Daytona. All right, well, let's get into the races. First, we're going to start with Superbike. This was the first of the 3 race weekends this year, and that combined with the heat and the humid weather, and that all had to just like compound off of each other and just make the difficulty for the teams as well as the riders just increase exponentially, because they're trying to fit in 50% more racing into the weekend as it is, over the traditional format. And I think that little bit of extra fatigue showed in that final race in race 3 by, at the end of the day on Saturday. But let's start with race 1. When we got to race 1, Matthew Skoltz, he got the whole shot from pole, and his starts has been something that he not only improved this year, but I now think that he excels at it. Like, he might be one of the best riders in the field. When you go back and try to chart his consistency at starting every single race, JD Beach was able to slide right into second place with Sean Dillon Kelly right behind him, and Bobby Fong was right there in fourth. So all the championship leaders were together. Right behind them was Benjamin Smith, and he was able to hang with them from the start for a while, but then he had an unfortunate little mishap on lap 7. Now, the red flag came out on lap 7, but it wasn't for Ben Smith. It was for Hayden Gillum. He went down in left hook there in the infield, and, man, he was able to make it all the way to the air fencing. Now, I love air fencing. I'm going to say that flat out. And I'm also going to say this. Every time I see a rider make it all the way to the air fencing, covering up a wall, and then get up and walk away afterwards and be completely fine, I just feel completely compelled to go and donate to the Road Racing World Action Fund, because that's what supplies a lot of this air fencing around the tracks that MotoAmerica goes to and makes all of this possible. Now, I'm sure you can Google that, Road Racing World Action Fund, and you can find a link from there, but because I know I look for it sometimes whenever this happens. When we had the restart, it was 10 laps, and Matthew Skoltz got another whole shot. And this time he was followed by Bobby Fong, Sean Dillon Kelly, and JD Beach in that order. We had a little bit of shuffling around, though, at the front. A couple laps in, and a small gap began to develop between Sean Dillon Kelly and JD Beach. And when that started to happen, Loris Baz decided to take advantage of that and made a move on JD Beach to try to get back up to, and catch back up to the front 3. And when that happened, Richie Escalante was also able to get by before the end of that lap. And so JD Beach started to fall down a little bit in the order. And in the first 2 races, that's kind of what happened. And it was, I think his tires just were going out underneath him pretty quickly. We'll talk about it later in the Super Sport race. But this surface of this track, it's different. And you can, when you go look at it in person, you can kind of see how it would really chew up tires. And you have to have your bike set up perfectly in order to make it last a full 20 laps. And these guys had to do it 3 times. That's part of, it really is an amazing feat. All right, anyways, I'm rambling again. 6 laps to go. Bobby Fong made a move for the lead on Matthew Skoltz. And then shortly after he did that, man, Matthew Skoltz had a tremendous save. When he lost the front end, period. It was gone. He was in that sharp uphill turn to the right, that after you go through underneath the bridge coming out of the snake section, and if that hill wouldn't have been so steep, I'm sure that Matthew Skoltz would have just crashed out of the race entirely, because that's part of what helped him save it. After that happened, Bobby Fong was able to pull away in the closing laps of the race and win race 1 by a little bit over a second. And that was his third win in a row at VIR. P2 was Matthew Skoltz, and in third place was on the podium was Sean Dillon Kelly. Richie Escalante finished in fourth, Loris Baz finished in fifth, and JD Beach rounded out the top 6. When we got to race 2 the next day, it was the first race of the day, and JD Beach got a whole shot. He got a great start, and Matthew Skoltz was right up there again, right behind him in second, and Sean Dillon Kelly was in third, and they were kind of leading a group of 6. And to be honest with you, even laps into the race, PJ Jacobson and Cameron Peterson, they really weren't that far off the back of that group of 6. It was really actually like more like a group of 8. Kind of just like right there at the front, which has been something that we see at least once every race weekend now, and it is just awesome. Let's see here. Bobby Fong got a terrible start, but he started making moves. He was down in 6th place about 6 laps into the race, and then he made a move into 5th. And then on the next lap, Bobby Fong passed Richie Escalante for 4th. And then Bobby Fong picked off Sean Dillon Kelly later that very same lap for 3rd place, while at the same time Matthew Skoltz made a pass for the lead. And then on the next lap, Bobby Fong was in 2nd place. And then at this point, it just felt like that winning his 4th Superbike race in a row at VIR was just going to be inevitable. I want to point out something else too. Watching the race broadcast later on, if you watch this race broadcast, pretty early in the race, Greg White made a really good observation that I just didn't really notice until he pointed it out to us. And it's about how, with both of these bikes, they're both Yamaha R1s, but all you have to do is look at the swing arm, and you can start to see the differences in the development path that has been taken by these two Yamaha teams in a Progressive Attack Yamaha and Strack Racing. It's hard to describe the differences in detail, like in an audio format, because unfortunately podcasting is not a visual medium, at least I choose to keep it that way. I know everyone else is out there making videos, but looking at the two bikes side by side on a TV screen, you can definitely tell that they are different. Anyways, after Fong made his way into 2nd place, this race kind of settled down a little bit, and things did get a little bit more strung out in the front. It's about 4 laps to go. Bobby Fong was able to make the move into the lead. And on the very next lap, for the last 3 laps, Richie Escalante and Sean Dillon Kelly started going at it. And it was awesome. And it was super exciting to watch. Richie Escalante at VIR is one of the reasons I picked Suzuki to win a race this year way back in our preseason predictions. So, yeah, it was awesome to see this super fun battle for 3rd place. At the end of the race, it was Bobby Fong winning by a small gap over Matthew Skoltz, and Sean Dillon Kelly was once again in 3rd, with Richie Escalante getting his 2nd 4th place finish in a row. JD Beach was in 5th place, while Loris Baz was in 6th. And now we get to the last race of Superbike for the weekend, and that was race 3. And it just had absolute chaos at the start of that race at the front. And it helped shake up that running order for the first real time this weekend. This is what I'm really talking about when I think that the 3 races in the hot weather were absolutely contributors to this crash, because you usually just don't see that many mistakes made by the front runners at the same time on the first lap. Now, it's hard not to argue that Loris Baz didn't gain the most from those incidents, because he won the race, and it was his 2nd MotoAmerica Superbike victory. And it was also, very beneficial for PJ Jacobson and Jason Uribe, both making their first podium visits this year. I think PJ may have made one already. But anyways, my point is, I think the rider who benefited from this the most was JD Beach, and he was not having a great weekend up until that point. It wasn't terrible either, but he was not good, just losing ground to his championship rivals in both race 1 and race 2. And now he got to come back in race 3, and he got a decent load of points by finishing in 4th place, while Bobby Fong, Matthew Skoltz, and Sean Dillon Kelly brought home 1 single point combined between all of them. So when we look at the final standings for race 3, we had Loris Baz getting that 2nd victory here in Superbike and MotoAmerica, while PJ Jacobson finished 2nd. Jason Uribe rounded out the podium in 3rd. JD Beach was in 4th place. Hayden Gillum was in 5th for Real Steel Honda team, and Brandon Posh was the lead Suzuki in 6th place. So even with all the carnage in the third and final race, the championship doesn't really look a whole lot different than it did before the weekend started. Sean Dillon Kelly is still in the lead, and now he has 250 points. Matthew Skoltz is still in second place, and now he's about 17 points behind. Well, he is 17 points behind. There's no about for it. This is just simple math. I don't know what I'm talking about. He has 233 points. JD Beach is in third. He has 219 points. Bobby Fong is in fourth with 212. They are 31 and 38 points back from the championship lead, respectively. In fifth place is Cameron Peterson. He just has a Grand Canyon of a points gap on either side of him. And then now, moving up into sixth is Jason Uribe for the Orange Cat BMW team. Moving on to Super Sport, I thought something would finally change at the front this weekend, and that came true. In race one, what an exciting three-way battle for the lead between eventual winner Darren Binder, who was followed to the line by Josh Hayes, who, as I mentioned at the start of the show, had a pretty fine weekend. A lot of that has to do with just the sheer volume of experience that Josh Hayes has in his library. Now, something I may have mentioned before is I have spent a lot of time in trades, and a lot of them that are involved in building all sorts of things. In this case in particular, I have a decent amount of time working in asphalt. Now, I hope VIR never repaves because that surface just looks gnarly. A big indicator to me is how, at a lot of tracks you see darker areas leading into the corners that typically result from the rubber being laid down on the track. Now, here at VIR, you see a lot of lighter areas in those heavier used portions of the racing surface. Now, I'm not the kind of experience with this that I could just make a guess of how old the asphalt is at VAR, but a bit of an indicator to me to the asphalt age is how heavily used lines around the racing surface, being that opposite of color and being lightened, it's because of sunlight exposure over the years. It breaks down the liquid asphalt binders that are within the pavement, and it leaves just behind a much harsher surface that is just mostly just fine aggregates, and those aggregates can accelerate the wear of tires, kind of like writing on sandpaper. Josh Hayes and all of his experience here, which is also a track we haven't necessarily been to every single year lately, so that really gave him a leg up, having that knowledge over the rest of his super sport competitors as he managed his tire wear at the beginning of race two, or of both of the two 18-lap races, so that he was fighting for the win at the end of race one and just walked away and dominated race two by over 26 seconds in some sketchy conditions to start. In that race two, Hayes was able to use his wealth of experience to just make the right choice and slick tires, knowing that the track was going to dry quickly. And part of that is that what I was talking about earlier, where the sunlight breaks down the asphalt binders. That also creates pathways for water to drain more quickly from the track, so the track will dry faster. You don't have that liquid goo pretty much sitting there holding the water up. Anyways, Darren Binder was the second place finisher, and he was kind of on an island by himself behind Hayes, which was doubly impressive when you consider that Binder had to start from the back of the field. He had another 10-ish second gap behind him to Brendan Kettleson, who earned his first Supersport podium. That's a big achievement and made for a second consecutive impressive overall race weekend for the BPR team, getting a win in Supersport and 4 total podiums, and then 3 total podiums and a win in Supersport, getting 2 Superbike Cup victories. Just another all-in-around impressive effort for that team. Blake Davis also had to start from the back of the field, while championship contender Josh Herron, he made the right call to switch to slicks, but he did so kind of a little belatedly with the team, and because of that, they had to start from pit lane. Herron managed to claw his way up, though, all the way to 4th place from pit lane, while Blake Davis finished 7th, right behind Tyler Scott in 5th and Kayla Yakov in 6th. So as we go to the Supersport points leaving VIR, it was also the second consecutive weekend that Darren Binder has now been able to make his point lead grow over Josh Herron. Now he sits up atop all alone with 318 points, while Josh Herron's in 2nd. He is 35 points behind with 283. Kayla Yakov is in 3rd place with 189, and Josh Hayes is now only 3 points behind her after the victory in race 2. Tyler Scott falls down to 5th place. He has 165 points, and Blake Davis is in 6th with 151. Moving on to Twins Cup. Oh, I don't know if you can hear that thunder or not, but it is about to storm. Hank Vosberg, he qualified on pole. And the only way I can really say it is that race 1 was just a slog. You know? I mean, heck, it pretty much got red flag before we even had a chance to take the green flag and start the race, because we had someone's bike blow up on the siding lap and it dropped oil all over the track. Because of that, the race that was initially scheduled to be 13 laps ended up being cut down to 12. We finally got the race started, and we didn't even really get one full lap in before we just had absolute carnage making the turn up at that right-hand turn on the uphill after the snake. It's pretty hard to see exactly what happened because there's just not really a great angle on the TV coverage available, and I wasn't in that section of track. But someone at the back of the grid just got in way deeper than they ever had any business of trying to pull off. And I kind of wonder, by having Twins Cup being at the end of the day a lot of times, I think having to be the last race of the day, it can be hard for younger riders and just not get too eager when they finally get their opportunity to go out there and race. When we finally had our guess first, but maybe second restart, we had 6 laps to go. And this time, Matthew Chapin got the whole shot on the restart with Hank Vosberg right behind him. There wasn't a real definite breakaway at the front, but it didn't really matter because we can't really complete 2 laps this day for some reason. As Sam Drain started making moves, it seemed to just teleport to the lead. We had another red flag as Juliana Fernandez unfortunately had just an off in turn 2, and she was a little slow to get up. A lot of riders did crash this weekend, but a lot of them also got a little bit banged up to various degrees, and I'm glad this class gets a month off so that everyone has a chance to rest up and heal before New Jersey. So let's see here. Another restart. Now this time it is 5 laps. Matthew Chapin got the whole shot again. He was so quick all weekend. He's so good here, and he's one of the, he won one of the Twins Cup races last year at this track. And if you remember, he did that decisively over, Alessandro Di Mario, who this year was leading the Super Sport race at points for the first time. So, Matthew Chapin is just so good here. Sam Drain was able to make a pass up that right-hander that goes uphill, and as he was doing it, Matthew's bike unfortunately blew up. Matthew's so good here, but he is unfortunately also just had some bad luck this year. It is what it is, I guess. That guy's just so fast, though. After all of this, we have a 3-rider group at the front, as Sam Drain leads Hank Vosberg and Bodie Page. All Hank needs to do now with Matthew Chapin out of the race is just win the race to wrap up the championship early. And, now that that's the case, he takes the lead on the last lap, on the very next lap. Vosberg opened up a gap over Drain over the closing stages of the race, over that last lap, Sam Drain managed to close that right back down. So when they crossed the line at the finish line, it was Hank Vosberg won by only 0.046 seconds. Second place was Sam Drain. Third place was Bodie Page, and fourth was Kevin Almedo, while Chase Brown got a 5th place finish, and Isaac Woodworth was up there in 6th. Race 2 was the last race of the weekend, and in this one, Hank Vosberg and Sam Drain got out in front again together, but this time they didn't really just get out of the way on their own. On lap 2, Bodie Page was able to take the lead, and then, oh my God, what a nasty crash for when there was 10 to go for Matthew Chapin. Just, if you haven't seen it, it's all over Instagram, and it looks rough, but, he just pops up every time. Chapin was one of the riders that took part early on in our 5-question series. Now, through that, we learned that he was a high school wrestler and a football player. So we already knew that he was tough, but man, he keeps showing it every single time and how he just pops right back up and usually just runs to his motorcycle to try and get back in the race. Anyways, 1 lap later, after Chapin had his incident, Hank Vosberg retook the lead of the race, but unfortunately that only lasted another lap or so before Bodie Page went down in the same manner as his teammate in the same corner. This time that brought out the red flag, and it was just a rough duo for both of the Suzuki team. I think I think the world of both of them. Actually, let me rephrase that. I think both of them have the world in front of them, but this weekend was rough. All right, we get to the restart. Hank Vosberg got the whole shot again, and this time we had a 5-rider group at the front because Sam Drain, Kevin Olmedo, Kinsey Matsudaira, and Cole Varnes were all up there. And, at this point, with another restart in race 2, it kind of feels like we've had like 6 Twins Cup races over this weekend. With 4 to go, unfortunately, Cole Varnes washed out of that top 5 in turn 14 when he just had a low side off into the grass. And then Sam Drain, we got to the last lap, and he took the lead in Sector 1 and tried to open up a little bit of a gap over Vosberg, but Hank managed to just draft back by on the front straightaway to wrap up a perfect championship weekend where he did indeed seal this title. Sam Drain crossed the line in second place, 0.122 seconds back, while Kevin Olmedo made it on the podium in third. Now, also, moving up, so I'll get to this in a second. Credited with 4th place finish was Andrew Y, and then 5th was Eli Block, and then 6th place, making it 2 teams in the top 6 for the TST Carnes Performance Team, is Solly Mervis. I think that's the first time we've seen him in the top 6 this season. I may be wrong though. What I was referring to there with the finishing order, Kinsey Matsudaira was on that Kramer GP790R. If you were, you may have noticed on American Superbike Show, AmericanSuperbikeShow.com. I have to remember my own website. You may have noticed this weekend that we put up a story about the Kramer getting a test run in the Twins Cup. And about the fact that it wasn't going to earn any points or anything. So immediately after the race, it was kind of, pretty much just disqualified, but they wanted to give it the opportunity to run and test. So I believe Kinsey Matsudaira, I don't remember if he finished in 3rd or 4th, because I did not actually put that part in my notes, unfortunately. But it was up there. It finished well, but so he wasn't included in the official results. All right, let's move on to Talent Cup if you weren't thoroughly confused enough with that. So as we move on to Talent Cup, we're going to keep talking about Sam Drain. I actually had a couple minutes to catch up with him this weekend. I think it was on Friday. He was looking forward to getting to the races last weekend because now that he is completely healthy. I also asked him if it really was doubly hard to do both classes while simultaneously being injured, and he said not really. So there goes that theory that I had. Anyways, he sure did show that he is fully back right from the start of qualifying, with doing so in the middle of the front row and taking off with Nathan Galker from the start of race 1 and leading deep into the race. Nathan Betancourt also had himself a real good weekend. He also qualified on the front row in 3rd place and was battling with Kinsey Matsudaira for a podium spot deep into the race before losing a handful of positions over the last couple of laps. Now, check this out. Betancourt crossed the line in 6th place, okay? But he was only 0.135 seconds off of a podium spot. Covering that gap in between him was Kinsey Matsudaira on the podium in 3rd. Jake Page was 0.066 seconds back from Kinsey in 4th. Derek Sanchez was just 0.038 seconds off of Jake Page, and then Nathan Betancourt was 0.043 seconds off of Derek Sanchez. That is a tight pack. In the end, it was Nathan Galker who was able to have the best weekend of everyone by winning both races. Race 1, he won by just 0.034 seconds in his own little battle with Sam Drain in race 1. Race 2 was slightly different affair, as on a Sunday, as Nathan Galker was easily the best. He was easily the best. He won race 2. It was delayed by thunderstorms that kind of necessitated a wet weather familiarization session, I think. I think they had to do one as well. Although the track got completely drenched by passing storms, by the time the familiarization session was over, the track had started drying out again, so the race was run on slicks. Now, in race 2, Galker crossed the line a little over 5.5 seconds clear of Sam Drain, who earned a second place finish in a row for the second day in a row. Sam Drain was kind of all out there alone by himself, as there was a healthy gap back to the next group. And this time that group battling for third, it was a three-way battle, and they crossed the line separated by just over half a second. It was once again Kenzai Matsudaira who was followed by Jake Page again to the line in fourth place, as it was in race 2. And this time it was Nathan Betancourt that was able to get a top 5 finish in front of Derek Sanchez, who was just a little bit further back from this group in 6. When we look at the Talent Cup standings, leaving VIR, Kenzai Matsudaira still sits on top in the standings, but his lead has been chopped all the way down to 5 points over Nathan Gauker. Matsudaira has 249 points to Nathan Gauker's 244. In third place is Jake Page with 176 points. He is 73 points behind. And then 11 points further back is Sam Drain in fourth place, with Reese Frankenfeld in fifth place and Derek Sanchez in sixth place in points. So that was all the races from Virginia International Raceway. I wanted to take a minute to mention the website, AmericanSuperbikeShow.com. I talked about how I did manage to throw an article up there this weekend about the introduction of the Kramer GP7090R on a non-point scoring development trial to see if it's a good fit to be allowed in the twins class. One of the biggest reasons I made sure to get that up on Friday was because there was just a lot of confusion at the track, not just among fans, but among the competitors themselves about what the Kramer really was and wasn't going to be able to do. And so I'm really thankful for Joe Carvinen of Kramer to be able to give me just a few minutes of his time there at the track, because it was immediately after the first practice session that I went and sought him out to help kind of clear those things up for me, and hopefully for you as well if you were able to catch the article. Since we are talking about the website, there has since been another piece written that was added early this morning, which it is Wednesday. It is, I called it the Parc Ferme. It's a little bit of an after look at the round itself. And in this case, I talked about some of the awesomeness and the history and just the little finer details of Virginia International Raceway that makes it so appealing to me and why I made sure to come to this race. And I also talked about how, not only are the people awesome, nice and they pleasant, even when I'm showing up at 6 a.m. because I have trouble sleeping in hotel beds especially when they feel like they've been made out of plywood. But they have some stories to tell. And the coolest part to me, especially with my background and my history in the Air Force, is they don't tell them. And that's why they get to have those opportunities take place at their track. And it's just cool to be able to go to a place and see where that kind of stuff happens. Also, in that same written piece, you'll find at the end where I kind of give a little bit more of what my thought is for the direction of the website. Yes, I started it, and I started throwing some pieces up there, but now, there's a lot of places that you can go to get just pure race results, and they're up there very accurately and very quickly. Like I've mentioned before, the fine folks at roadracingworld.com. That's one of those places where you can go and find that. There's also Road Race Report. If you've never been there, that site looks slick, and it has all that information that you're looking for with those kind of areas. And if you follow him on social media, especially Instagram, they are so good at social media. So I'm not here to do that stuff. What I'm going to try and do is I'll be active as I can on social media because I want you to be a part of the show. But I'm going to do 2 written pieces a week. And then that's going to be on top of the same weekly podcast every Wednesday. It may be recorded later on Wednesdays now, but this podcast will keep going. And as far as what will be contained in those 2 written pieces on the website, well, I hope to keep that just different each and every time. I have a couple already written, ready in the bank to go when I kick this off next week. And then I have a couple more ideas and things that are already planned out. So it'll be interesting. There's a lot of good stories out there, and I'm just going to continue to try and do my best job in telling them. Until next week, y'all take care of each other. The theme song of the American Superbike Show is Who's Afraid of Virginia Wolf by the band Fay Ray off of their album I Love Everyone. A special thank you to No Idea Records, and thank you for listening.